Letting go of shadows. My name is Sarah, and I'm 30 years old. Life has taken me down some winding roads, with moments of joy and heartache. Today, I live in a small town with my family. It's a peaceful place, surrounded by open fields and quiet streets, where everyone knows everyone else. I have a 10-year-old son, Jake, from my first marriage. Being a single mom was never easy, but Jake has been my rock, my purpose, and my greatest blessing. Now, I'm married to John, my second husband. He's 38, and together we have a beautiful 1-year-old baby who has brought light into our lives. Our home is full of laughter, toys scattered everywhere, and the chaos that comes with raising children. But beneath the surface, there's a part of my story that isn't so picture perfect. I met John 6 years ago, when I was 24. At the time, I was still trying to rebuild my life after my divorce. My first marriage didn't work out for many reasons, but I was determined not to let it define me. I wanted to move forward, to find love again, and to give Jake a stable, happy life. John and I met in an unusual way, over the phone. A mutual friend had given him my number, thinking we might hit it off. At first, I wasn't sure about the idea of talking to a stranger, but something about his voice drew me in. We talked for hours that first night, sharing stories about our lives, our dreams, and our struggles. There was an ease to our conversations, a natural connection that made me feel safe. For weeks, we spoke on the phone before finally meeting in person. When we did, it felt like coming home. John was kind, thoughtful, and attentive. He didn't just listen to me, he truly heard me. He understood the challenges I faced as a single mother, and he didn't shy away from them. Before long, we were dating, and it felt like the start of something special. John had never been married before. In fact, he hadn't even had children of his own. I admired his openness to stepping into a ready-made family, especially since Jake and I came as a package deal. He embraced Jake like he was his own, playing with him, teaching him, and showing him the kind of love and stability I had always hoped for. As our relationship grew, John began to share more about his past. He told me about his previous relationships, including a long-term girlfriend he had lived with for 4 years. They had never married, and he was the one who ended it. At the time, I didn't think much of it. We all have pasts, after all. But then, John mentioned someone else, a girl he had loved when he was just a teenager. She was his first love, the one who had stolen his heart when they were only 16 or 17. They had been inseparable until John joined the army. When he left, she moved on. She didn't wait for him, and it broke his heart. At first, his stories about her felt harmless, like the kind of bittersweet memories we all carry from our youth. But as time went on, I began to notice how often she came up in conversation. He kept a card she had given him before he left for the army, a small piece of paper that seemed to hold so much weight. It sat tucked away in a drawer, but it felt like it was always there, lingering between us. One day, John's mother brought her up. She told me how devastated John had been when his first love left him, how he had spent years thinking about her. She was the one he really loved, his mother said, her voice tinged with nostalgia. It stung more than I cared to admit. Still, I tried to push those feelings aside. I wanted to believe that John was fully committed to our life together. After all, we had built something real, a home, a family, a future. But doubts began to creep in, especially when John started asking about her. He would talk to her brother, casually inquiring about her life. Was she married? Did she have children? Was she happy? Each question felt like a crack in the foundation of our relationship. Then came the night that changed everything. It was New Year's Eve, and we decided to go to the city center to see the holiday lights. It was supposed to be a magical evening, a chance to celebrate and create memories as a family. But as we walked through the crowd, I noticed John's expression change. His eyes fixed on something or someone in the distance. I followed his gaze and saw her. She was standing there with her husband, laughing and holding his hand. It was unmistakably her, John's first love. He stood frozen, watching her as if time had stopped. In that moment, I felt invisible. Jake tugged at my hand, asking what was wrong, but I didn't have an answer. All I could do was watch as John stared at her, lost in a world that didn't include me. When we got home, I couldn't stay silent. I asked him directly, "Do you still love her?" His response was defensive. "You're imagining things," he said, brushing me off. But I wasn't imagining it. I had seen the way he looked at her, the way his entire demeanor had shifted. Over the next few months, things between us began to unravel. John grew distant, retreating into himself. He stopped smiling as much, stopped engaging with me the way he used to. I tried to reach out to him, to bridge the growing gap between us, but it felt like he was slipping further and further away. I started to feel like I was living in her shadow, constantly competing with a memory I could never erase. Even when John wasn't talking about her, it felt like she was always there, hovering in the background of our lives. I began to question everything, my worth, our relationship, and whether John truly loved me. One evening, after the kids were asleep, I confronted him again. "Do you want to stay with me?" I asked, "or do you wish you were with her?" John looked at me, startled by the directness of my question. "I love you," he said, his voice firm. But his actions told a different story. I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I knew the truth. I spent weeks wrestling with my emotions, trying to decide what to do. I loved John, but I couldn't ignore the pain of feeling like I was always second best. I couldn't live with the constant ache of wondering if he was thinking about her when he was with me. Finally, I made the hardest decision of my life. One quiet morning, as sunlight streamed through the windows, I told John the first was leaving. I told him I couldn't live like this anymore, that I deserved to be with someone who saw me as their first choice, not a consolation prize. John didn't fight me. He looked sad, maybe even regretful, but he didn't try to stop me. In that moment, I realized that I had made the right choice. I couldn't change the past, and I couldn't make John love me the way I needed to be loved. Leaving was painful, but it was also liberating. I'm still learning how to rebuild my life, how to find joy and strength on my own terms. But one thing is certain, I deserve to be loved fully, deeply, and unconditionally. And so do you. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for listening.